ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند
My name is Abdul Shahid. Some call me Shahid for short. I became Muslim in 1997. I was born here, but my ancestry is English. I am married and have two children, Hudayfa and Uthman. Hudayfa, you wanna wake up?
Like what? I was standing up there.
Should I put another one?
Papa, put on your face.
I am currently teaching the Quran and Islamic studies at an Islamic college in Melbourne. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also said in the Quran, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Allah said in that verse that I didn't translate just now, He told us the reason why we are fasting, for us to get something. What is that something? Be like the poor people? No. Omar.
Teach you how to fear God.
Good. وَمَا أُرْسِلُوا عَلَيْهِمْ حَافِظِينَ. Before completing a double major in Middle Eastern Studies and Arabic language, my university granted me a scholarship to study at Damascus, the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. That was a beautiful experience, for I am someone who loves history. Damascus used to be the capital of a vast Islamic empire that stretched to Spain. The sense of history surrounding this part of the world is captivating, to say the least. I became absorbed and I quickly felt part of it. Back in Australia, something unexpected struck me. While talking with some of my friends about that experience, we wondered about how well we knew about the history of Muslims in Australia. We felt the sense of duty and urge to uncover how deep Muslim history goes in this country. Thus, we went on a journey, and this is our story.
Dawn, Mario, and Mercedes. Greek origin?
Every young adult in Australia faces challenges.
Because we've been in explain yourself mode.
We're just trying to follow our religion.
Inside here is still the original floor, wooden floor, which is on the ground. We're basically the first Muslims that came back to Islam, I think 3 generations.
Muslims represent a very powerful market force in the world.
Check out Islam, because we're telling you that this is the best, this is the better, this is the upgraded version.
How can you deny the oneness of Allah? Allahu Akbar.
Our first task on this journey was to find out the level of knowledge of Islam and Muslims in Australia. To do this, we went to Dr. Kevin Dunn, who was asked by the Australia-Indonesian Institute to analyse a survey on Australians' public knowledge of Islam.
Well, first of all, only about a fifth of Australians were able to say that they claim a reasonable grasp of Islam. About half said they knew a little bit. which isn't encouraging. One of the problems is when you look then at that type of that knowledge is it's quite problematic. It's a little bit of knowledge. There's a saying, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. When asked, what is your understanding then, they would tell us about stereotypes that they've heard about Islam or make some criticism of Islam. 1/3 said they just knew nothing, which is probably a very honest response.
After hearing of these findings, we went to a mosque open day to see firsthand what people's understanding of Islam really is.
I've always been interested, passing this mosque regularly, to come in and find out a bit more about it.
It's the only time I've ever been in a mosque.
Is this the area you worship in?
Well, I'm very interested in finding out about different religions, you know, and just to develop my understanding.
I don't know what to expect. I mean, all I know, you see them as a building, but up to date, you never had the freedom to come into it.
I've been to mosques before.
Yeah, this is
when
my
I've
first
travelled.
time. Yeah, so.
Well, I think the whole lot's interesting. I mean, I'm interested in the subject. I've been to church myself this morning. I'm a Christian, and one of the vicar said that, you know, if you want to go and see this place today, you can go and see it. I thought, that's why I'm here.
I know, it's just more an edge of curiosity as well. And there's so much criticism that revolves around Muslim people.
You hear all sorts of things about you blokes. And I say, but I mean, as a Christian, I've got an open mind.
And people want to know about, of course, Muslim and Islam, I think. And as I said, we really need to understand each other and have a good understanding. And that's almost the basis for, as I said, respecting the others and for everyone to live in peace, in harmony.
An American born in New Jersey. I moved to New York at about the age of 2. Strangely enough, I never met a Muslim, and even up to the time where I actually accepted Islam, I had not really met a Muslim or sat down and chatted with a Muslim and been exposed to Islam as a lifestyle. The feeling had entered the heart, and I knew that Islam was what you have to do. That doesn't mean that I was prepared for it or that feeling strong enough that I can implement everything immediately, but I knew at least that it was the truth.
I'm a Catholic, and I've been brought up inside that the Catholic is the right religion to believe in, and I brought up like that, and I believe in that.
I probably came here with absolutely, hardly any understanding, so it was really, really informative. Like, a lot of, I actually didn't know there wasn't that much of a comparison between, Christianity and the Muslim religion. I didn't know that there was so many links in between them, because I've been baptized, but I never have really, I've never really pursued trying to find a lot about other religions, and obviously because of my parents, I didn't exactly have give me religious freedom and things like that.
We all understand that society today has a lot of problems, and certainly faith has a big part to play in curing that.
Answers that science can't explain. I mean, science describes things like the Big Bang, and that it was, before that there was nothing. What made the Big Bang? It's all these massive questions, and it comes down to those massive questions like that, and in the end you start questioning, why actually do I exist? I mean, it's not just go to school, get a degree, earn money, have a family, and then die. That seems like the motivation a lot of people have.
Today, the number of Muslims in Australia is approaching 500,000. More than a third of them were born here. The rest came here after the Second World War, together with 6 million other migrants who came from 200 countries to make Australia their home. Muslims migrated from the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and Europe. From countries such as Lebanon, Turkey, Afghanistan, Bosnia, Pakistan, Indonesia, Iraq, Bangladesh, Fiji, Albania, and so on. Although there are significant numbers of Muslims in each state, the majority of them reside in New South Wales and Victoria. Some of the new migrant stories are particularly interesting.
Yeah, they came in about the 1920s onwards, established some very important communities, Mareeba in Queensland in the tobacco growing area, and a very early mosque established there, but also in Shepparton, Carlton, Victoria. These are all permanent mosques which still exist and run today, and can be traced back to the Albanian presence. And fairly successful, hard-working agricultural folk. And of course they arrived in 1967. And of course they came to Australia while the White Australia policy was really still alive. It hadn't been officially dismantled yet. And they came because of an agreement signed between the Australian government and the Turkish government to supply Australia basically with manufacturing labour. The Australian government were very impressed with the guest worker schemes that had been operating within West Germany and other Western nations, which involved large numbers of Turkish guest workers going for short periods to Turkey. And they wanted to replicate that, but the tradition in Australia at the time was for permanent settlement. And so the Turks who came here more or less permanently settled, although many at the time didn't think they were doing that, but of course they did. And they've established a lot of mosques and a lot of community infrastructure, and very, very successful migrant group, I think, within the Australian circumstance. Another group that's interesting are the Lebanese in Australia who arrived not long after that, in the 1970s principally, since then through family reunion migration. A sponsorship scheme was established to assist those Lebanese people come to Australia. And so interestingly, we had these very, for me as a geographer, very interesting links between suburbs in Sydney and particular villages in different parts of Lebanon. And again, I think a very successful migrant group. And of course, renewed flows from the former Yugoslavia republics as well in recent times, associated with the Balkans conflicts. And the benefit for those migrants in particular has been the existing, particularly Bosnian communities, which were already here in Australia, and they've been able to assist them in profound ways through welfare infrastructures and the like. And so a lot of services and resources needed to assist with some of our humanitarian migrants in recent times has been provided by these long-established Islamic groups, such as the Bosnians. And again, that's a story which I think would be better if we all knew a little bit more about.
After hearing about Muslims who are here today, we decided to explore further how they helped in laying the foundation of what will later become Australia as we know it today. It was in the 1800s when the new-founded colonies of Australia began to benefit from the arrival of the Afghan Cameleers. Although referred to as Afghans, they came not just from Afghanistan, but from areas which are in present-day Pakistan. Cameleers were known for their ability to penetrate the harsh interior of Australia. Camels would carry such things as building supplies, food provisions and drought relief to remote areas of Australia. Among significant developments, they facilitated laying down much-needed train lines throughout the country. Furthermore, they assisted with the overland telegraph line, which crossed 2,500 kilometres and connected us with the rest of the world.
Between probably 1860 and 1920, I would say somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 Afghan Cameleers came to Australia. And of course they had a fundamental role in assisting with nation building in Australia, because big infrastructure projects like the overland telegraph and some of the rail lines, of course, the transport, the heavy lifting and transport and carrying was undertaken by camel trains. Well, of course, the Burke and Wills expedition, is the first use of camels and the first presence of Afghans. And the Afghans were also involved fundamentally as hawkers, which were like the mobile department stores of outback Australia, resupplying outback stations, also police stations, with all sorts of goods, haberdashery, lollies, sweets. They were a familiar figure going around the Australian outback.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la
When the Afghan people come here, there was a paddock here. There was a mosque. And they bring in their camels here. 1888. They built it. They give that pounds. They own that pound a week. But they're giving the pound a month. Everyone to build a mosque. That was cost about 450 pound mosque. They built it. The minaret wasn't here. But two Afghans was sitting there. And one said to the other one, he said, listen, I got this little bit money. I want to build it 2 minaret here. The other one, he said, very good. He said, Allah will help you and so on, you know. Anyhow, he built these 2 minarets. And it cost 125 pounds. The other one said, you build now these 2 in front, but I will build 2 in front on the back. I build 2 in front here, but they must a little bit higher than yours. This is the higher. You see?
We journeyed to Broken Hill from Adelaide by car. On our way, what seemed so easy by car must have been a test of patience by camel. Most of Australia's interior can be harsh and lacks shade.
Camel ears had been brought in the 1850s, 60s into South Australia to open up South Australia, and they did extend into Broken Hill when it was being founded between 1883 and 1888. It became a town in 1888. They were very active in those early days and covered this whole area, and they did open this mosque for their service, their prayers. But as kids, they used to come here, and the water used to be out here for the people praying to wash before they went in, and these little deers used to get these 3-corner jacks and throw in this water until the old fellas woke up. But yes, during the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, some bright peanuts came and damaged the door, painted slogans over here, ruined the sign that we've got up the front. So our secretary of the day patched these up. Now, this ante-room is only just in the last 12 months. The floor has been taken out and the cement put in. Inside here is still the original floor, wooden floor, which is on the ground, which, as you can imagine, is the reason that we've got lots of rust and the building's deteriorating. So the little ante-room has got a few interesting artefacts around, and it creates an atmosphere for visitors who are non-Muslim. This is our prayer room. Our Imam used to, I presume, pray from here, and as you can see, this is it.
Traces of these historic mosques can be found deeper inland in places like Burke and Maree. The original Maree Mosque, which was built in the 1880s, does not exist anymore. Locals rebuilt this replica in appreciation for the Afghans.
I was born in 1937, and my mother lived 2 blocks down from here, was reared there, and she can remember the Cameleers and coming up here as children, and the Cameleers used to be big, she said big, upstanding men, all dressed with their beards and everything else, And she found them very hospitable people, and she can remember the fruit and this type of thing that they used to have and used to share.
However, these hospitable people faced challenges which helped bring their life in this country to an end.
They had a tough time because this was a period in Australia where there was an emerging sense of nationalism which was fairly racist. And indeed the Fathers of Federation, in their attempts to rally people to Federation, did play the race card. And the White Australia policy, of course, was the first act passed by the national government once that government had been formed. And so that made it hard then for non-whites in Australia, and there were deportations, including some Afghans. And of course, Afghans were unable to bring their families to join them after the passing of the White Australia policy.
They live for there that little bit, but they save and it's finished. Some of them, they went back home. Some of them, they even didn't reach home. They die. Majority die here. There's their graveyard here from the old Afghan. There.
As we go deeper into the outback, remnants of the Afghans are still with us today. A train that bears their name stands as a witness of past times. It was in 1770 when Captain Cook discovered the east coast of the land we know of today as Australia. Thereafter, Australia was colonised by the British in 1788. Cook's monumental journey took place on the Endeavour. We had a chance to view the replica of that historic vessel. Shortly after, we dropped into the Maritime Museum next door to where the replica of the Endeavour was anchored. There we came across artifacts and information stating that Indonesians were frequenting this land over 100 years prior to Cook's discovery. This led us to investigate the relationship between Muslims, Indonesia, and Australia. Australian author Eric Whitehouse laid claim that Australia was mapped by Muslims in the 9th century. He uses this map titled Sea of Java from Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi to prove this point. Our research could not conclusively prove that this was the map of Australia or the Sea of Java, since the only existing original map is in the Strasbourg University in France and is yet to be translated. However, he did present further evidences to support his claim. Sketches of Aboriginal cave paintings resemble Arab dhows, which had 2 masts, as opposed to the European ships, which had 3 or 4. In any case, what is clear is that Muslims frequented these regions, and from the 9th century they composed detailed maps of the known world. The port of Makassar, located on Sulawesi Island, was well known for its sea navigators. In the 1600s, they began traveling southeast to the land of Marigi. Marigi was a term they used to refer to Australia. Young merchants brought with them rice as well as tamarind fruit. The seed pods from the tamarind fruit added flavor to the rice. Due to this, the abundance of tamarind trees that span across our northern coast resulted from the seeds that were deposited by the Indonesians. In Canberra, we met Dr. Abdus Samad, who is of Makassan lineage.
There are 2 tribes in the southern Sulawesi, and but mostly known as Makassar. And the other tribe is Bugis or Buginis. They are sailors. So Islam came into Makassar or Sulawesi around 15th century, a bit late compared to Java and Sumatra.
And from about the 1700s, they were certainly coming regularly to Australia and using the monsoon winds to arrive in northern Australia, and then using the monsoon winds again going the other way 4 months later to return to Makassar.
In Darwin, every 4 years they have a celebration where either they do it in a place called Sulawesi in Indonesia, or in Darwin where they celebrate the coming of the Muslims.
They came to North Australia not for trade but for looking for what you call it, tripang, sea cucumber. That is sea cucumber, and they got in touch with the Aborigines there.
During that period, they would set up processing plants, if you like, to use modern day language, for the drying out and the preparation for storage of these trepangs.
Indonesians themselves did not consume trepang. Rather, it was boiled, gutted, then it was smoked in makeshift smokehouses and sold on the international market. The largest market was that of China, where trepang was considered a delicacy.
They were here for some time, and they were involved in, of course, in that period, in a lot of exchange with indigenous peoples, and also some Aboriginal practices, particularly around death and dying, which incorporated some Islamic practices.
I learned that they invited some Aborigines to come to Makassar.
Some anthropologists were able to trace people in Makassar who were actually of indigenous Australian lineage. For a long period, that was it was a frequent Muslim contact with Australia. From about 1906, the trepang getters were effectively excluded from entering Australia.
In the 1800s, the new colonial power of Australia imposed license restrictions on the Macassans. And on the 26th of July, 1906, a letter was sent from Australia to its neighbours in Sulawesi with the news that licensing will no longer be approved. Therefore, fishing for trepang will no longer be permitted. To continue our story about Aboriginals, we went back to Redfern, where Shahid Malik, who was nicknamed Rocky, is continuously working on community projects in order to help future Indigenous Australians. Rocky shared with us an interesting history of Aboriginals and how they became Muslims.
There was an old Aboriginal lady where I lived, and I asked her about Islam. She was alive when these stories were told. She was a little kid when the Muslims were still in Australia. And I asked her, how did our forefathers become Muslim? She said, when the Muslims came, they said, thou shalt not kill, and they didn't kill. When the Muslims came, they said, thou shalt not steal, and they didn't steal. When the Muslims came, they said, thou shalt not commit adultery, and they married our women. When they see the British soldiers, they're actually British then, come through to kill and rape Aboriginal women, the Muslims took up arms and defended. That's what made my people. She said, that's what made our people bow down to Allah. The message of Islam. But over time, when the Afghans built the railway and the government had no need for the Afghans, they sent them back to Afghanistan and left their Muslim wives and children. So over time, we kept the names like Abdullah and Malik and Ali, because my forefather's last name was Ali. But see, we keep them names, but we didn't keep the Islamic culture because we had no Muslims. And over time, Christianity and missionaries, and particularly in the stolen generation, where they took maybe 60,000 children in New South Wales alone to Christian homes to Christianise our people. So basically, we didn't just accidentally lose Islam, but alhamdulillah, now we believe that we're the first ones that re-emerged as Muslims in our family, in our particular tribe in Moree.
common ground that Rocky and I found in this religion brings us together, where in the past our attitudes would have been worlds apart.
Islam is the last and only hope for Aboriginal people to become true to what they are, so they can give up drugs and alcohol and domestic violence, because Islam condemns all them things. But the other culture that they're in doesn't condemn it, it actually promotes it. Otherwise, what's my proof? We have the most alcoholics, the most drug addicts, the worst health in the world. Diabetes calls from alcohol and drugs. But Islam teaches you to be clean and pure and respect Allah. So that's why I know Islam can cure the sick.
Oh, I know you're praying.
After our journey, we asked ourselves, where does this history bring us? And what is the driving force that continues to inspire Muslims today? Meet my friend Isa, who is always searching for new opportunities to provide information on Islam.
Excellent.
We're here at the Mind, Body and Spirit Festival, and we're checking out this laughing club. This lady's a professional laugher, so we're checking out how she makes people laugh. And Rabia's not the happiest. What we're doing today at the Body, Mind, Spirit Festival is giving people general education about Islam. General education. People have seen Muslims on the television. The people have seen Muslims in their workplace. They have next door neighbours that are Muslims. They go to university with Muslims. Muslims are everywhere. We're 1/5 of the world, and we're giving the people general information on what we believe, how we view God Almighty, how we view this world, how we view the next world, how we get our connection with Allah the Almighty. The big question is, what do you really know about Islam?
Around the dinner table of a traditional Moroccan restaurant with friends, where food and words are shared with a beautiful cup of tea. Topics were deep and personal, and for many of us, it meant remembering our way to Islam.
I was born Mario and Mercedes. I have a Greek origin, born, bred here.
I'm Italian background, European background. Chinese, Ethiopian, Philippines.
Irish, Australian, Italian and Irish background.
I don't know your story, why you embraced Islam.
My name's Isa. I embraced Islam 7 years ago. And that's it, alhamdulillah.
About in year 11, I think, maybe year 11, I started wondering about God and about how I'm supposed to, be closer to God. I wanted to be religious.
Well, when I used to go to primary school, we had religious education classes, and I used to love being in those classes, hearing about, the prophets like Moses and Jesus and Abraham, peace be upon them.
I was like really in love with Jesus, the personality, his mission, what he did, what he would say. I was obsessed. All these movies, like the Jesus movie, they send to the third world countries to convert people. I would watch all these movies. I was obsessed with it.
And I really yearned for wanting to be practicing a religion, but my environment, my friends growing up as a teenager, it wasn't the best environment to become a practicing person.
But the dogma of the Pauline doctrine, I couldn't understand it. Because all through the Bible, these messengers and these prophets were sent that teach this, that teach that. And then suddenly Jesus' message started the same way. And then some guy called Paul comes along and says, no, we're going to abolish this. We're going to go this way. And I couldn't understand this. I couldn't at all understand this.
I couldn't connect to being many gods, or no gods, or your God. I couldn't use stuff it just didn't fit with me.
And I'd have more questions. And I'd ask and ask, because my mother was a Bible teacher. We knew the Bible, and I was studying the Bible. So I'd have these questions, these extraordinary questions, and no one could answer them. But then I met Muslims, and they would answer these questions, and they would say the purpose of life is to worship God Almighty on His terms.
The essence of these terms was summed up for us by our dear Sheikh Abu Ayman.
Islam is made of three main pillars: believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and believing in the message, and believing in the messenger. This is the three main issues Islam is talking about. And when we talk believing in Allah means not just believing in Allah, that means Allah is there and Allah is the creator and that's it. And we say, okay, thank you Allah for giving us the drinks, thank you for giving us the food. It's more than thank you. And we translate thank you in our action, in our belief, in our tongue, in our limbs, in our life. By adopting the system Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to us. And this is what the second part, which is the message. And the message cannot be translated without the messenger. So the messenger came to explain to us what Allah wants through his message.
Like when growing up, I thought Muslim was some person that lives in Islam, meaning Islam is a country and a person who lives there is Muslim. China, Chinese, like this.
So it was a wake-up call, put it that way. It put things into perspective, clarified misconceptions that I had, not about Muslims, but about life in general. But more importantly, I reconnected myself to God, which I hadn't had that connection for since I could remember, probably never.
That already struck me in Islam, that's the foundation of Islam, the one and only God.
You know, when I read about it, it said Muslims believe in one God. They are strongly monotheistic. They believe in all of the prophets which I used to. They believe in the Bible which was sent to Moses, sent to Jesus. And I said, this is amazing. This is something I never ever knew about.
I was keeping my name Brent originally, and I was at a band practice. And I said, listen, in the break, I said, listen guys, I've become Muslim, you know? So, oh, you know, cool, Malcolm X. And so then one guy, he was from a very strong Christian family, he said to me, so Allah wants to destroy Jesus. And I said, what do you mean? He says, your God wants to destroy our God. And then I said, okay, from then I said, I have to take this name Isa, a Muslim name. So when people say, why this name Isa, why you change your name to Isa? Then I can start talking about Jesus Christ and the Islamic perspective on Jesus Christ. When you tell them that actually we believe in Jesus, we believe in Moses, we believe in Abraham, you have a link, common link. And when you tell them we respect him and we love his blessed mother and we believe in his miraculous birth, there's a common link there.
I was upset at my Muslim friends for not showing me the path, even though they knew it, for hiding what they should have shared with me. That was very frustrating.
Always from a young age, I knew there's something about this book. At the very least, there was a respect that I had for it, even though I didn't really know anything about it.
Okay, who wrote this book? It seems to know a lot about me, or how I think, or how I feel.
When I read it, I just had a profound effect on me.
Once I read about the miracles of the Quran, for example, how it talks about how a little baby, like my daughter Aisha here, how they take place in the mother's womb. This is something which amazed me because I know this is something which wasn't known 1,400 years ago.
But the one thing that really struck me even harder than that was the salah. The brother took me to a masjid and I sat at the back of the masjid and I watched all the brothers praying. And when I saw the brothers praying shoulder to shoulder, feet to feet, the brotherhood, the unity, surely that's the way that a man has to pray towards the Creator, physically, spiritually and mentally. And also in the Bible, he's mentioned often, Isa alayhi salam, that prostrates himself to the Creator. And he told his followers to pray in that same way.
It states in the Bible that when he prostrates himself, he puts his forehead on the ground. Who is praying like that? So you want people who pray like that. So I thought, yeah, that sort of sparked something off. Yeah.
I remember actually growing up, I had a Bosnian friend and he was white. And I assumed because he was white, he had to be Christian. So when he told me that he was Muslim, I was shocked. And I thought, it doesn't make sense. Like Muslims they're exotic, they're foreign, they're dark. They're not white.
So it doesn't matter if you're Indonesian, doesn't matter if you're Eritrean, doesn't matter if you're Greek, doesn't matter if you're Chinese. The belief in God, one God, unites us.
So when I found out that he was Muslim, I looked into the history of, the Bosnian people, how they came to Islam. Was it forced upon them? No, they embraced this. It was something that they accepted. And when they were left free with the decision, they kept it. Same as Indonesia. Islam came to them and they accepted it. Everywhere it went. It wasn't something which was, a cultural thing that they were born with. Islam came and it spread and the people saw the justice in it. They saw the perfection of it. They saw the beauty of it, just as I did. and we all accepted it.
Islam is an option. Allah says in the Quran, La ikraha fid deen. There is no compulsion in accepting religion. So what these brothers here have shown is that the option was presented to them, and they investigated, and they accepted this. And by doing this, it didn't make them any less Australian. All these boys, they still eat Vegemite for breakfast. They still go down to the high school and they kick the footy. But now they just have some systematic order in their life which will benefit the society. It's not going to bring harm to the society, because Islam obligates us to treat the neighbor well. Islam obligates us to be just in business transactions. There's no dishonesty allowed. No worries, mate, mafi mushkala. We have this in Islam. So if anything, these boys are now become better Australians, and they're going to contribute to this society in a better way.
Contribution is also on the minds of the new generation of Muslim youth.
Every young adult in Australia faces challenges. And if you're Muslim, non-Muslim, you face the same challenges. However, wearing a uniform and being a Muslim and being in the media, you face a lot more challenges. Because now you are stereotyped, now you are singled out, now you are looked upon as someone who is a foreigner, someone who is regarded as a so-called such and such. And you really have a responsibility now on your shoulders to integrate into the community and show the people what type of character and what type of person a Muslim should be.
Media has effect on everything. Doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Christian, or anything. If they got to get ratings, they'll find a way to get the ratings. They'll blow it out. It's like a balloon. You just keep pumping it and it get big.
You'd see something on the news, that sort of stuff, you think, oh, Islam's bad, you know? This is when I didn't know nothing about Islam. But you come here and you realise the truth.
So the Muslim youth of today have a larger responsibility than back in the day when our fathers came and we were just tagging along.
We can sit there and let it simmer and let it happen and not do anything, or you can see it as a challenge and you can see it as a chance on an opportunity, and a beautiful opportunity for you to actually learn your deen, learn your religion, get the knowledge, and then pass it on.
Every week, there's maybe half a dozen people who inquire about Islam through the center.
Well, my parents have seen the change in me, and they think it's for the better, because every time Allah says in the Quran that to worship Him alone, He also tells us to be good and obedient to your parents. Now, instead of laying down and not doing anything, I'm helping taking their clothes off the line or whatever.
I'm actually from Serbia, but I'm Muslim. And after the war broke up, I went to Germany. I came to Australia. I was always interested in Islam, but I never really had the chance to learn about it until like last couple of weeks. I didn't even pray actually. So until the beginning of Ramadan, I met Muaz after a few years because we were friends in school. And he told us, he invited me to come pray with him. It helped me relax more, helped me feel better about myself, and I don't know, made me feel more lighter in so that's for sure.
He'll be there for you. He'll be there for you.
One topic on the minds of these youth is unavoidable.
I had a lot of friends who used to go clubbing and discos and that sort of stuff, you know, and I used to ask them why do you want to go there for, you know?
Well, it's the entertainment generation, and the only avenues that they have been provided for them is drugs, sex and rock and roll, like they say.
And I go, well, do you want to marry these women? They said, no way. I'll go, then why would you go there? You know, I want to go to a place where I know ultimately to find a woman, if that's the reason they went there, ultimately find a woman that I would like to stay home with, not someone that would dance with others. Because I want the wife to be for myself, you know. Call that selfish, but you know, that's the way I am.
Well, I'm going to try to find someone that holds the same beliefs as me, and also someone that will be able to fit into my family, be able to interact with my parents, because my life is my parents and my family. If the person I live with cannot do the same with my family, then I can't live with that person.
As the most recognizable face of Islam, the Muslim woman is in no doubt about the stereotypes surrounding her. Many fail to see beyond the scarf. So what is it about the Muslim woman and her hijab?
Simple. The main reason why Muslim women wear hijab is because Allah said so.
We're not going against society. This is just us trying to follow our religion and to please our Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
It is your personal relationship and your connection with Allah. Every woman has the choice, but at the same time, Islam has rules and regulations, and it is said that a Muslim woman must cover.
My father didn't force me to do it, neither did my husband. I do it out of my own choice because it's the government which I feel safe. I feel that no one is judging me for my other physical assets, but my attributes where my intellect and my PR skills are concerned, and my value as a person.
In my opinion, that the woman who is in hijab is liberated because she doesn't have to follow the fashions of society. She's not a slave to society. But a woman who's not in hijab is always trying to follow the fashion, the new trends. It's oppression. I see that as oppression. But when you're in hijab, you know that you're not pleasing society, you're pleasing yourself and you're pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
The mother of Jesus, Mary, was portrayed as always wearing the hijab, and she's the holiest woman in the Christian history and even in the Christian religion. No one ever said that she was oppressed. Why would anyone say that I'm oppressed because I wear the hijab?
So when it comes to issues of oppression, and when it comes to issues regarding the media, I think we just all need to individually educate ourselves.
Explain what is going on, but feel comfortable and content that we are part of the makeup of the Australian society or the global village for that matter.
The lack of interaction with Muslims, in my opinion, is one of the sad outcomes, because for people who've never met a Muslim, you can imagine the kind of baggage they're carrying, and to ask them to start thinking about that and to unpack their assumptions about a Muslim can be a very daunting experience.
If you don't know any Muslim women, attempt to make conversation or introduce yourselves to Muslim women, and you'll find that when probably not what the media portrays us to be, and sometimes always looking at the media and believing what they say isn't always the true story. We personally need to go on our own research and our own path to find the truth.
You know, not only do I not want you to save me, but I want you to take responsibility for clarifying some of the misinformation that you're getting.
And move forward rather than keep on justifying for our own whatever issues that are happening.
I see you praying.
It's the end of the holy month of Ramadan, and it's a cause for celebration.
Allahu Akbar.
This is the end of the fasting month of Ramadan for Muslims, and the Prophet ﷺ says the Muslims have 2 Eids per year, 2 festivals or 2 celebrations per year, and one is Eid al-Adha, one is Eid al-Fitr, one of which being this day.
It's a whole big family celebration, alhamdulillah, mostly friends and relatives.
There's no feeling to explain, it's beautiful. It never changes. Every Eid, it's the same feeling of, it's overwhelming almost. Joy doesn't even hold it in.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم الذين يأكلون الربا لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذي يتخبطه الشيطان من المس.
Welcome to the first International Australia Halal Trade.
I'm delighted to be here at the first ever International Halal Trade Expo held here in marvellous Melbourne in the state of vibrant Victoria.
At the first Halal Trade Expo, we got some insights on how the halal trade impacts our economy.
today. Now we have this first Australian exhibition here in this magnificent building, the Royal Exhibition Building. The most important is that this exhibition like this is really put Melbourne on the map. We eat halal, we live halal, we trade halal.
Well, look, Australia has a great reputation in a whole variety of areas, but particularly in food production, and so we've got a reputation for very clean, high quality food, and so I think there's a lot of opportunities there for us. And I mean, when you look at the fact that most of our immediate neighbourhood is are nations which are predominantly Islamic. So the Middle East and Southeast Asia are predominantly Islamic nations. So there's an enormous opportunity there. World standard research and development capabilities and manufacturing expertise saw exports reach nearly $3.3 billion in 2005. We think we can grow that area of our exports to $12 billion by 2010. So that's 4 years from now. So that you're talking about virtually quadrupling. Look, I think these sort of events help us firstly to get nations in our region in particular to see us as a source of food production and food processing, but secondly also help I suppose the Australian community to understand understand the Islamic way of life a little bit better, and also that there are enormous opportunities, trade opportunities and business opportunities in terms of developing halal products, and not just in food.
When people feel that the word halal is something which is so friendly, they will perhaps want to participate in business, want to participate as consumers, as producers. As we saw from the presentation just now, we can enter into the field of education, in the field of trading, in the field of services, in the field of science technology, biotechnology, and many others.
We produce an international magazine on halal. It's the Halal Journal. What we're seeing now is that we're getting now a convergence where the industry, the governments, the academics, the scientists are all realizing that halal is a huge important issue. I mean, the Muslims are 25% of the world's population. You know, the market for halal goods and services in the world is $500 billion US annually. If you add Islamic finance into that, it's in excess of $1 trillion. The Muslims represent a very powerful market force in the world, and halal is emerging now as really a new market paradigm. You know, what we're seeing is the emergence of really a halal market economy, of where you have goods and services which are not only for the Muslims, but they involve everybody, because halal is for everybody. And if you look at the industry side of halal, a lot of the non-Muslims are involved in producing halal. So the non-Muslims are producing halal, the Muslims are eating halal. So already you've got an arena which everybody is involved in. Australia has a very good reputation. The raw materials from Australia, the meat products, the dairy products, they're very well regarded in the market. And I think, Australia has taken halal seriously for the last few years, and I think with renewed commitment, I think what we're seeing is the government in Australia probably realizing the extent of the market and the possibilities in the market, and that the halal export sector is very important for Australia.
Is it halal? 200% halal. 200% halal. Where? Ask him to come here. Brother, one for you, brother.
I guess today now starts off with the business end of the business, so to speak. And it's interesting as you go through and you look at what halal is. It is actually about quality. It's about ensuring the delivery of the product either to the table or indeed through the process to the table is delivered in such a way that the quality of that product is without question. The Muslim population is now making up to close to a quarter of the world's population, and I think that's something that we need to be mindful of in Australia. That whilst we focus in certain other sectors, there's certainly this community group that we need to be focused on.
Malaysia alone, 20% of the imported processed food is from Australia.
I believe that we are moving, and we're moving towards a better unified
halal system that's within Australia but also within the world.
I want to see, and I'm sure some of the suppliers here would like to see us in terms of having some contracts that are not only supplying in the hundreds of tonnes, but in the thousands of tonnes.
A recent study of the IDA titled Muslims and Non-Muslims in Australia showed that stereotypes can be changed.
What happens when people get to know the other, their usual shortcut, the use of a stereotype to make a quick assessment, stops that chain reaction.
In fact, 93% of participants found the deliberations between Muslims and non-Muslims as valuable.
And that, if that was multiplied around Australia, that would change a whole lot of responses between Muslims and non-Muslims and lessen the tension.
A unique event took place in Melbourne when the local Muslim and non-Muslim community came together in a show of unity against racism.
My name is Chris Lee. I'm a resident of Coburg, and I read about this event in the local newspaper, and I thought I'd come along to express my support for the Muslim community, because there's a lot of attacks on Muslims in the media and by politicians.
Today is lovely. People here from all walks of life, all shapes and sizes and colours and faiths, and yeah, this is what it should be. I reckon anything that brings us all together and says that we're not each other's enemies. Ordinary people here, we've got to stand together and say this is our town.
It's very, very important that we don't have communities isolated. The Muslims are in the front line now. We've got to stick behind them, because if you guys get victimised, if you guys get tagged as potential terrorists, then they'll try somebody else tomorrow and the day after.
We don't want to end up like in Sydney, a situation like in Sydney with Cronulla. The problem up there was that there was not only the boneheads, there was people like the Australia First Party and Patriot Youth League, and they've gotten well established in Sydney, and I think that's a real problem.
They're very ignorant, very bigoted, very ignorant. I don't think they've got any idea about the makeup of Australian society. It's always been a cosmopolitan society, people from many different walks of life, and we're all just common people, and I think they just forget about that.
A good point I heard just before was that these racists and bigots and all that, Australia First, and Pauline Hanson's back in town and saying taking our jobs and all that sort of thing and blah blah blah. And when you've got picket lines and lots of rallies and all that, the racists don't turn up. If they're so concerned about jobs, you don't see them turning up to rallies and picket lines and things like that.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. So what's happening here, Sheikh?
Nothing. Alhamdulillah, everything quiet, under control. Beautiful. Thank you very much. Inviting everyone.
Why are we here?
To see you. To see beautiful faces here.
That's very good. This is a good community affair, good community event for people to come together, and it's very good to see Muslims and non-Muslims together, talking to each other, learning about each other. It's very good.
This normal life should be like this.
This is how it should be.
Yeah. How it should be. So we give this day example for the others. We are like the others. The people can sit with us, we can sit with them, we can talk with them, they can talk with us, because some other people make you like strange. Nobody can come near you.
Can't touch you.
I have good story. If I tell you, you will laugh.
Yeah.
Once I came from Sydney to Melbourne by airline.
Yeah.
As you can see me, non-Muslims was sitting next to me. He was sitting like this.
He didn't move.
Yes. I can read his face. Then I bought
water,
juice.
Juice.
I said to him, "Would you like to drink juice?" He started
relaxing.
He said, "No." I said, "Yeah, you have take it. Come on, take." I said, "No." Then I saw him. He feel relaxed.
Yeah.
Why he becomes scared? Because someone make him scared from us.
That's right. Yeah.
Subhanallah,
This is right.
So when we meet them, they meet us. Because when I know you exactly, when I come closer to you.
Yeah.
When I come closer to you.